Welcome back to Bills and Business. I'm your host, Laura Carr, co-founder of USLege. Today, I'm excited to welcome the Honorable Larry Gonzales to the podcast. He's a former member of the Texas House of Representatives and held key roles, including chairman of the Sunset Advisory Commission, as well as being chairman of the House Appropriations Committee, overseeing 42 appropriations for state agencies. I'm really excited to have him on the podcast today because we're going to discuss his unique story of how he came to be, what he's doing right now, and also the impacts of artificial intelligence on the state's infrastructure and economy. What did you enjoy more about being staff than member?
Because you didn't have all the pressure of actually pushing the button. You didn't have to campaign. It wasn't your name on the line. They weren't saying things about you that your wife and mom had to read.
Sure.
Had 3 death threats that DPS took very seriously.
Wow.
Some long story there.
Really?
Oh, DPS followed me home and all kinds of stuff.
Is there a reason for that?
Because I wouldn't sign my name to a bill that never even got a hearing, never even got referred. And I don't sign things unless I hear the debate in committee and I have the notes and then floor amendments. And then once it passed and I understood what it was, I put my name on it. Even things that I knew I'd support, all the pro-life stuff, I waited for all of it, put my name on it, so that I could use the same reason not to put my name on other things. And they were mad because I wouldn't put my name on some stuff that never even got a hearing. And death threats. These days you got to take it seriously. So yeah, it was, staff was great, advising the member and sitting down, and that was great. Member, and of course, going broke as a member is, we get paid,
I think a lot of people who are not in the Texas legislature do not know that.
They have no idea.
The average citizen does not know that you do not get paid.
I lost $1.4 million in 10 years. Every penny I made in my 20s and my 30s doing direct mail, I lost in my 40s being a member. And I've been just having to rebuild it ever since. I walked out of there dead ass broke, $80,000 in debt.
And how much do members make a year?
$600 a month, but after insurance and taxes, $259.73. If you're Tony Dale, my friend Tony Dale, who had his entire family on health insurance, he was in the hole every month. Lost money every month. So people have no idea. People have no idea.
Larry, you have had a crazy career.
It's been a long time. I've seen it all.
Can you tell us how it all started? Because we've got a visual aid here, we've got it all, but where you started, how you started, I'd just love to hear it. I know everybody would. I
was taking a class at the University of Texas called U.S.-Mexico Border Relations, where we studied NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement. At that time was a theory. It was not law yet, it was a theory. Great class. And then I saw on the Burdine Hall bulletin board, there was a state rep who wanted some NAFTA researchers. I figured, well, I've just finished the entire class. So I got a job doing NAFTA research for Representative Tim Von Dolan and just spent the semester doing everything, constituent work, phone calls. You wind up doing everything, not just the NAFTA stuff. And I was hooked. And that was the fall of 1991, I think. Yeah, still in school.
And so how did you get into direct mail? Do people even know that?
I figured out that there was no money in government, and can't make a living there. So I had a consultant who asked me, do you want to learn how to design direct mail? Sure. So I bought Photoshop 1 in 1993. Illustrator had just come out. InDesign wasn't out yet. And I, for 8 months, hunt and poke, and taught myself Photoshop and taught myself Illustrator, taught myself the postal regs for a 6x11 card versus the fold versus how it has to fold, taught myself all the postal rules, and just started figuring out what size to mail for what rates and what was the best bang for your buck, and just figured out the science behind direct mail. Started doing direct mail, working for a consultant, a lot of money in that, and that was pretty cool. Did that for him for 2 years before I put up my own shingle. And then for the next 20 years, I ran Lazarus Graphics and designed direct mail for 20 years.
Is this one of your pieces?
Yeah.
Okay, let's put it up in the camera here. But just before this, Larry said he saw this outside and said, "This is some of my work."
That's my work. It took me back when I saw it because I remember designing all that mail piece for Texas Association Business. My friend Bill Hammond hired me to do a lot of work. And so we did these direct mail pieces all over the state for all the state reps who had earned a certain, score with the TAB. And that's what I did. I designed direct mail, and it was great. What I did was I would work a legislative session as staff, and then I'd do campaigns for a year and a half. And then after the campaign season, I would go work for one of the freshmen to help get elected, set up their office, show them how to use the computer system, file a bill, all the work part of it, knowing I was going to leave. My job was to train the staff, and then when session ended, I left. And I would go do campaigns, direct mail for another year and a half, and then go work for the next freshman. And I did that cycle for 20 years. It's great.
How many members did you work for?
Wow. As state staff or campaign side?
State staff.
Gosh. Let's see here. I did 9 sessions as staff, and I only did back-to-back once. John Otto, Chairman Otto, 0507. So somebody different every year since 91.
Wow.
It's a lot.
So you saw a lot of different members. Didn't put you off running for office, though. How did that happen?
It almost did, because I knew what it was. I knew the sacrifice on your finances. I knew the sacrifice on your time, your family, right? I've seen some great men and women get here and just really struggle with the personal side of what this is. It's very, very difficult job. So I was like, you know what? I'll be staff forever. This is great. I love it. And then I got approached to go run a race, and thought about it, and we got in and did pretty well, and then had a pretty good run as chairman and doing some really good stuff there in the legislature. So very proud of the work we did, but I think every member has a certain amount of gas in their tank, and there are some members who can have a 20-year career but have a very slow burn, don't do a whole lot. And I burned through my fuel in 8 very, very difficult years, wearing lots of different hats, and it was great. We did some really, really good work, but it was time. And I knew it was time, and I was there for 8 years, and it's time for the next guy. It was wonderful.
And what were some of the highlights from those 8 years?
What's interesting is I did this exit interview on my way out with my local paper. And they asked me the question, what's your biggest accomplishment, right? And there are lots of things to say, right? You could point to chairman of Sunset Commission and a TxDOT Sunset Bill and a Railroad Commission Sunset Bill. As chairman, I appropriated for 42 state agencies twice, a budget conferee twice. I mean, there's a lot of gavels hanging in my office for some really cool stuff. But the best stuff you never heard of, because the best thing we did was we were heavily invested in the world of special education. Because of my son, and he was struggling, and as Alexander was struggling, I would go to legislative council and say, how do I fix this for my kid? Like, tell me, how do I get my kid out of PE? He hates PE. He can't throw a ball, catch a ball, dribble a ball. It's the second period of the day. They laugh at him, they make fun of him. He cries the rest of the day. Like, I need my kid out of PE. Sure. And they said, well, there's this thing called adaptive PE for physically handicapped kids. If you're in a wheelchair, you're not doing the basketball section, right? If you're visually impaired, you aren't running track. So there's statute allowed for some accommodations for handicapped kids. It didn't say physical, but the ISDs had interpreted it to mean physical. Okay, so we changed it to physical and mental, and under mental, we defined autism. And so all the kids like my Alexander, they had an out. They had an out. And they didn't have to do those things that caused them so much grief the rest of the day. And about a year later, 2 years later, I show up at one of the parent groups that we were belonged to with Alexander, and the young man at the table asked me, did you pre-register? I said, I did. What's your name? Larry Gonzales. He looked at me and he goes, like, Larry Gonzales? Yeah, that's me. That's me. And for the next 30 minutes, I'm surrounded by parents telling them how much it changed their kid's life. And so it's important while you're doing it. You do. And I see it change Alexander's life, and I know there's probably thousands of kids just like him out there. But I got to meet those kids. Very emotionally overwhelming, knowing that you did really, really good work. With all due respect to TxDOT, much more important than the TxDOT Sunset Bill was giving these kids an opportunity to go to school and just get through their day without being bullied.
How cool was that for Alexander to know that his dad had done that?
I don't think he knows to this day.
That is really cool.
My older daughter completely understands what we're doing, why we're doing it. I'm not sure Alexander ever did, but 2-3 years ago, I'm driving home, and there's a junior high right next to my house. And I'm driving home, and all these kids are playing soccer. There's about 8 kids by themselves walking around the fence, very heavily stimming. I thought, those are my kids. Like, those are the kids who don't have to play soccer. Those are the kids who give me 3 laps, and they're not having to be in the middle of a situation that's very difficult for them and causes them a whole bunch of grief when the class is over, right? So you see some really good things like that. Every bill that dealt with autism for 8 years had my name on it. It was me, it was Dan Huberty, it was Bennett Ratliff for a year, and then Ron Simmons. We were the ones who really championed a bunch of the special education. And some of the stuff we did wasn't the most Republican thing sometimes.
I was going to say, was it nonpartisan, this type of legislation?
Yeah, it was great, right? But when we had this insurance mandate bill, that insurance had to pay for therapy for children with autism, we were pulled aside very quickly and told, that's an insurance mandate. It's the 62nd one in Texas. We don't want to do that. And we go to committee, and there's a lot of cards against the bill. And we started talking through what the bill does and what it means. And there was one particular member who kept pounding on the fact, what does it cost? What does it cost? What does it cost? And I kept talking around it a little bit, and what does it cost? And I finally addressed the member by first name. And I said, have you ever had a birthday party for your kid and nobody shows up? Because I have. And the room just goes silent. And I said, by the way, it's 38 cents a day, or a month. You're paying 38 cents a month. Everybody is, to make sure that my kid gets what he needs. I mean, okay, so it flies out of committee at that point.
I'm sure.
Flies out of committee, go to the floor. It's still an insurance mandate, and there are still some groups that weren't happy with the legislation. And I had one member in particular walk up to me and he says, not real happy with the bill, but I trust you as a dad that you know what you're doing. The bill passes unanimously, right? But it was because the dads were there, right? Not the legislative stuff. The dad was there, right? And I tell people all the time, from a member's perspective, people walk in with all these think tank papers and white papers and all this theory. It doesn't mean anything to me. I want to hear the story of the girl who got denied this, or the little boy who struggles with this. Like, to me, it was the anecdotal, tell me about the kid, tell me about the family, right? We were working on Child Protective Services. Tell me the story of the family that we disrupted their lives. Like, give me the real stuff, right? And that's what we did. We simply talked about our kids and the struggles they were going through. We made it real for people, and it's much more relatable.
That was my favorite part of being a staffer. I mean, we'd meet like 9-10 people a day, and a lot of times it was like building coalitions. And it was those real people who've had the experience. I mean, I've cried in meetings. Right. There were times I would like hold their hand and be like, okay, we'll do this and we'll make change. And that was the most empowering. Yeah, I will tell you the most difficult day ever as a member, since that was your next question, was on Sunset. We were doing Child Protective Services. And for 18 hours, we listened to all the horror stories of how the state of Texas had ruined these kids' lives. And everybody was there to tell us how we had messed up. We took kids when we shouldn't have. We didn't take kids when we should have. And all the things that happened to all those kids. Laura, for 18 hours, a mom sits down with a picture of, like, oh man, whenever the witness brings out the frame photograph, yeah, it's going to be a tough one, right? And they would just story after story after story of, we didn't remove this kid and look what happened to him. Or we took a kid that we shouldn't have taken and look what happened to him in foster care. It was just, it's the real stuff, right? I think that was the most difficult day as a member, was listening to how we, the state, had just ruined these people's lives. And I think that's why, for me, I took the job so seriously, because with the responsibilities I had and some of the really big stuff and appropriating a lot of really important things, the reality of what that is and the weight of what that is really was on my shoulders, right? And I think Mrs. Larry Gonzales would tell you that the job for me wasn't maybe as fun as it was for a lot of other people, that it really weighed on me, right? It really weighed on me. And I wasn't there
to go eat, and I wasn't there to go drink, and I wasn't there to play golf. I was there to work. Like, give me a problem and I'm going to fix it, right? And I was so fixated on the problem that I couldn't enjoy maybe the good stuff that was going on around me. So in 2017, I would get to the House floor at 10 o'clock. I've already been in my committee for 3.5 hours, and I was already mad. Here I am in this incredible chamber, right? 30 million people, and there's 150 of us. Like, what an honor. And I wasn't enjoying it anymore because it was just so much work. I was like, you know what? It's probably time to go. Right. Let the next guy have it. Let the next guy step up, because I'd burned through my fuel very quickly. And I was tired. I think I was spiritually, physically, mentally just broken in 2017. And I'll be honest with you, it took me a couple of years to recover. I mean, it really did. It took me a couple of years to get back to me, like where I felt like me, because the weight of all of that just really, really weighed on me for a long time.
You have a lot of power in that position, but there's a lot of problems everyone's bringing to you. I can't imagine.
What's the quote? With great power, with great responsibility.
Great responsibility.
And I felt it. I felt it all the time, right? And so that when we're looking at a budget, and there's going to be an elimination of 32 full-time equivalents employees, those are 32 real people who have real families who are losing their job, right? And so when you look at, we're going to cut 32 people, and they kind of go through their legislative appropriations requests, and they're talking about these exceptional items and all these budgetary items, but those are people, man. Like, it wasn't just a line and a number and a decimal point for me. I really thought about, so think about the guy who's going home and saying that his job had been RIFed, reduction in force, didn't have a job anymore, didn't have insurance anymore, right? That's the kind of thing that I really worried about a lot. And that when I got home, it still kind of weighed with me a little bit. Yeah, for sure.
Were there any times that you had to go really against the party, your peers, because you were really passionate about an issue?
Yes. Well, that's a great question. The answer is yes, but the answer is I more voted against myself because I sided with my district. I feel there's two trains of thought here, okay? Are you there to represent your district, or did your district send you there to do the best you can with the information you have? Okay?
What was it for you?
I was there to represent my district. And I can argue the pros and cons of both. I'm not saying there's one right answer. For me, I was there to represent the people at House 52. And on items where maybe Larry Gonzales differed from the district, I went with the district. Did it cause me a little bit of grief? Sure. But I never lost. I loved you. I never lost. But you know what? People knew it was thoughtful, right? People knew that it wasn't just a knee-jerk kind of party vote, that it was thoughtful, and I was thinking these through, and I earned that over the years, that people gave me that wiggle room, that I was representing the people who sent me there.
And what district span was that? So which cities and counties?
All within Williamson County. It was Round Rock, Hutto, Taylor, and parts of Georgetown. And look, it was even when I was there, I'll say this, it was red because it was my brand of red, right? It wasn't a super red district. It was a very much purple district, but it looked uber red because it was me. But the year I left, it flipped. And I told him it would happen.
It's back now.
It's red. It's back now, but it's a very different, like, I don't even live in my own district anymore. I don't live in 52 anymore.
Where are you now? You're in
136.
Okay.
136. Same county, same house. But the districts have changed so much that I'm not even in my own district anymore. I'm in a 68% Democrat district.
Interesting. Yeah. How have you seen it change in the greater Austin area?
People can't afford to be in Travis County. And you have a lot of state employees who just can't afford to be here anymore. And then when they retire and they get 60% of a number they couldn't already afford, now they really can't afford to be here. So they're going north and they're going south. Right? Hayes County is just booming. Williamson County now, you're not buying in Round Rock either. Like, it's going up 35. Georgetown is full. Like, Gerald's the next spot, right? Going north. It's just changing so much. The people, when they say, oh, people are coming to Texas, let me tell you, they're coming to Central Texas, where I live too, not just the Metroplex, it's changing a lot. And there are a lot of people coming here. I mean, just living in Round Rock since I have since 96 and just watching the tremendous amount of growth. And we've gone from, when I was there, a completely red county. Every office across the entire county. Not anymore. Not anymore. It is definitely changing up there.
How do you feel about all the expansion and growth we've had in Texas?
I think it's a good thing when managed correctly and when it's thoughtful going forward, right? So sometimes that bridge to nowhere is necessary because in 6 years it's going somewhere, right? So in Williamson County, we've managed so much of it with our county commissioners in that we anticipate the growth and you know it's coming. It's coming. So being able to invest in the infrastructure beforehand, water, roads, rail, air, whatever it is, to anticipate that growth. And here's the crazy thing from having appropriated tech stuff for as long as I have. The answer to traffic isn't necessarily more roads. Because when you build that new road, here come more stores, here come more superstores, here comes more traffic. So as you build out more roads, you continue to bring in more traffic to those roads.
What's the solution?
What we did with 130. 130 is built for mobility. That's it. If you get on 130, how far do you go before the next exit?
Oh, it's like on Mopac. I can't get off.
You're on for a reason, right? So on 130, think about 130. Once you leave Pflugerville going south, there's an exit every few miles. And even that doesn't take you to a convenience store, right? Because 130 was built for mobility. You're on and you're moving. If you were to build it out with box stores and gas stations and restaurants, it just brings more people. So the idea from Seguin to Georgetown is you have a parallel to 35, you're not stopping.
Oh, it's like the Autobahn.
I love it. I love it.
I'm going so fast
I
on the
love
highway.
it. Oh, I always drive the speed limit, so you would never hear me say that.
Well, not me over here. Guilty,
I have hit triple digits upon occasion. But that was the reason it was built, was the mobility along to run parallel 35 without getting through all the major cities. We use it all the time, and it's fantastic. If you remember back in the day, there was something called the Trans-Texas Corridor, and the idea was to build this superhighway with infrastructure. It would have utilities, it would have water, like along this one major thoroughfare would be all the lanes of traffic and all the infrastructure to help run these cities. It was very big under Rick Perry, and it got nixed because one terrorist hit takes out everything, right? That was one of the concerns, was, wait a minute, if somebody puts a bomb right there, you're taking out water, electricity, roads, like that's a pretty... So it wound up not getting done, but the chairman of transportation at that time was a guy named Mike Crucy from Round Rock, Texas. So 130 is our Trans-Texas Corridor that the rest of the state chose not to build.
Oh.
But we built it. And look how great it is. That was the idea behind that mass mobility.
Interesting.
But we built ours anyway, and it's nothing but positive infrastructure, economic development. It's incredible. It's incredible.
So, final kind of question for you on the legislative side. What was you said there was a lot of hard work and some dark times for sure. What were some of your favorite moments of being in the legislature? Fun times you remember?
I really miss the people, right? Like I really miss the people. There's I hate to use the word fraternity, but there is a fraternity that you go through. There's 150 of us living through the very same difficult moments, making the very same difficult votes, going back home, facing the constituents with the very same decisions, right? There's a camaraderie there that is just so different than when I was staff or anything else. And I miss the people. I miss the problem solving, that I could actually get in there and push the green button, right, to progress something, push the red button to stop something from being progressed. But the actual decision making of making things better, I think it was good. Several of my really good friends, former employers, have since passed away, and that's been hard. When I was a young staffer, these former members would pass away, and I never knew them. And then you start hearing members pass away that you remember as a staffer. Oh, I remember that guy. And now I'd go to the state cemetery, like I just went for Parker McCullough's funeral, and now the tombstones are men and women I served with. And so it's interesting to me, this progression
Wow.
through life, right? That now they're my friends. Chairman John Otto, right, is there in the state cemetery, one of my best friends ever in the legislature. I went to, Chairman Jim Pitts' funeral, over the summer. And Parker McCullough, who used to represent House District 52, which is how I know him, we had the same area. And it's the camaraderie amongst the very few of us who get this honor and privilege to represent. I miss those guys. I really do. I miss those guys, and I miss those kind of conversations where we're really doing some good work, right? So I think that's probably what I miss the most about it. The laughing and joking and having a good time. Honestly, that wasn't really me. I mean, we were pretty focused. I think my staff would tell you as well. In my office, it was 6 a.m. 6 a.m. Not arrive 6 a.m. That 6 a.m. computer on at the desk with your coffee ready to roll. Because I had from 6 until 7:15 before I went to go chair my committee. And then, Laura, I didn't come back.
Right.
So that hour and a half, whatever it was my opportunity to play offense with my staff.
How'd you stay awake in those times? I really think you use some major stamina as a member. I know as a staffer, I was there at 2 a.m., falling asleep at my desk at times. Now, when my bill was up, I was locked in. But how do you do that night after night?
It's awful. True story. I never drank coffee until the 2013 session.
That was it.
I just couldn't stay awake.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what, that first cup of coffee in your life, that hit me hard, man. Like, that hit me hard. I was like, what is this thing? I said, this stimulant, man. I was like, it's like, my gosh. So true story. I've never had a drop of alcohol in my life. Mm-hmm. Never done any drugs in my life. So to have a cup of coffee with that amount of caffeine in it actually had a serious impact on me. So I learned how to drink coffee, black coffee, and it's very difficult. And the truth is, it's hard to be on all the time, personality-wise, right? Because everybody who walks in expects a certain personality. And I'm kind of branded myself, right? I mean, I have a certain personality and kind of how I carry myself, and people expect that all the time. It's exhausting to be that guy all the time, right? Yep. And so very, very difficult. So I would go home and the light switch comes off. Just, I'm done, right? Like, all my energy is spent. So one time I took Marie with me to a chamber event, and my wife was wonderful, but my wife didn't care about any of this at all. So I took her to an event one day, and she saw me being Larry. She saw me being the chairman. She saw me working the room and doing all the things that we have to do, and the light's definitely on. We got back in the car, and she says, how come I never get that guy? Mm. I thought, wow, how unfair of me. But it's true. When I get home, the light switch comes off. Mm. I'm this guy for everybody else, but not my wife and kids. Because when I got home, I was just beaten down at that time, right? So I really thought about that a lot after that, was who am I when I get home? And that's why in 2017, when I realized I'm not happy and it's just overwhelming me, it's time to go. So I left.
That makes sense.
And I left it to the next guy to fill all those terrible, awful things as well.
You said you took like 2 years to really get back to yourself. What did you do for those 2 years after being a member?
What's crazy is I was pretty sick, actually. And I was struggling a lot physically, and had some very serious GI issues that had developed over the years with the amount of stress and just everything. And so I went vegan for 2 years, and I lost a total of probably was 51 pounds. The first 30 came off in the first 4 weeks, just on a vegan diet. And so vegan diet, started lifting weights again, which I hadn't done in 20 years, and just worked on my physical body, right? Getting my body to operate again, mentally, right? Listening to music, lifting weights, just getting in a space that wasn't a phone call or somebody needing something. I just needed to be alone, really. So from the physical part to the mental part, I just had to decompress. And I think going vegan really helped me on the physical side. It's a very hard lifestyle, by the way. I've
done it for 6 months and then missed meat and
Yeah.
far more on the carnivore side now.
Yeah.
But when you stick to something with discipline, I think it is great.
Yeah, I think where I struggled with, what made it easier for me, what made it easier for me is if I had that meat, I got violently ill. So it's a pretty good reason not to have that.
Everybody's different.
Because I knew if I eat that, there's a price to pay.
Mm-hmm.
So just 2 years of just sitting still, your mind, your spirit, your physical body, and I had to decompress. And I did that with diet and exercise. Go figure.
That's awesome.
What they've told you your whole life, right?
Yeah.
Diet and exercise.
There's no quick cure to feeling good.
Correct.
You know what you have to do, and that's it.
It's diet and exercise. I mean, it works. There's no shortcuts. When you do it right, it feels fantastic. So, and then I felt better, and then was able to get back to being me again. I felt like me again. My sense of humor had just disappeared. I mean,
really?
Oh yeah, I was unrecognizable to you probably.
Completely.
Kind of like how you know me today. You would not have recognized me in 2017. Wow. Yeah, it was a very, very difficult time for me. Yeah.
I'm sure your family noticed you feeling better. Did you go back then into the workforce? When did you get into lobbying?
So I actually resigned my position early in 2018 in the summer because people were building lobby teams. And I told the speaker I need to leave early because I need to look for a gig. And you're actually prohibited by law as a sitting member to have those conversations about employment. So I'm a rule follower.
Good.
And to me, that meant something.
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? I need to go so I can start planning the rest of my life. So I actually left early. I didn't finish out my term. So I left early and put my shingle out, and it's been a good run. It's been a good run, but it's a lot of work still, for sure. Without the campaign stuff, though, and even as a lobbyist, people are like, "Hey, we're gonna go block walking. Do you want to go?" No, I don't. If I was block walking, it'd be block walking for me. Here's a check, but I'm not walking, man. Those days are past me.
Do you still drink coffee?
Yes, and I shouldn't because of caffeine. But yes, I have developed a taste for that. I've tried doing more tea. It's not as good.
I know.
Yeah, it's just not
I
good.
love coffee.
And the cocoa has way too much sugar, right? Cocoa is just full of sugar. Yeah. So coffee.
Black coffee's, great. Just not, 50 cups. But in session, it's hard to stay up. What is your specialty now as a lobbyist and going into this? You seem, always very energized, and it obviously keeps you as you going. So, tell me more about what you're doing now and what you're working on.
I keep everything stacked in silos. There are certain issues I've never done as a member or staff that I'm not going to learn now, don't want to. I want to stay in my wheelhouse. I want to stay what I know. I'm one of those lobbyists who wants to be a subject matter expert so that when I walk in, I'm not just opening the door. I'm not just an entertainment lobbyist. Like I pride myself on, I know what I'm talking about. In order to do that effectively, I stay in things that I know. So I have a lot of business issues, taxes issues, appropriations issues, sunset. I'm staying within my realm of knowledge, right? That's where I'm more comfortable. And when I walk in, I can give my client spiel the entire time because I know it. Largely, I had a bill on it or there's something relevant in my life that's anecdotal about it. Mm-hmm. I worked for Autism Speaks for a while, doing some food bank work now. And I was active with the food banks when I was a member. So it's things that I'm already familiar with, right? So I still am a subject matter expert on this side, though, for my clients. So it really helps to have that relationship when I walk in. Largely, I'm still Mr. Chairman when I walk in, mm-hmm. which I appreciate. Even with the people who have never served with me, they know who I am, and I still get that respect, which I appreciate very much. So they know that I've been there. They know that I understand it. They know that I've probably seen it before. In 34 years, I've probably seen that piece of legislation once or twice in my life, and we talk about it. Sure. But I've earned that, for sure.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm sure people hearing your story.
Last session, I get these phone calls from a member who say, "Hey, can you help me with some writers?" Absolutely. So I go down there and to the office, and they have a stack of writers for the budget, and they just want to better understand them. So I went through probably 68 writers, 70 writers with this one member of appropriations. You know what this is? And I'll just explain what that is in the budget, what the programming is. Go to the next page. Oh, on this one, And we just talked through them for like an hour and 15 minutes. We just talked through all the riders. I don't have a dog in that fight, other than a member asked me to just explain things. Absolutely.
That's very cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
With this coming session, what are your top legislative focuses with most of your clients?
I would say artificial intelligence is just dominating my time and my conversations. Artificial intelligence is touching on every part of our lives, right?
Absolutely.
Every part of our lives. So that when I go to an AI hearing, that summary might go to 12 or 13 different clients for different reasons. But, when you start looking at how all-encompassing the issue is, there's some draft legislation in there that includes financial institutions, one of my guys. The electric grid, one of my guys. And so all of a sudden, artificial intelligence and the issue and legislation that's coming and the issues that are coming around artificial intelligence start really affecting a whole lot of people. So when you get into the infrastructure of AI and the electric grid and the water and all these things that are necessary to operate AI, that hits, probably all of my clients. So definitely artificial intelligence is something that I'm really following. Representative Capriglione is doing a great job. I can't tell you the dozens and dozens of conferences and things that I've been to because it's so all-encompassing across so many issues.
Is your stance similar to that of many in Texas of trying to continue growth, innovation, while also kind of mitigating any risks? Where are you in that?
Absolutely. I come from the let the private sector do its thing. Research and development, put the tools out there. Let's grow the economy. Let's grow the jobs. Let's put the technology out there. Let's see what it can do. However, we need to recognize where there can be some issues. So I'll tell you this very, very fascinating story. In 2001, I worked for Attorney General John Cornyn. One of the folks I worked with was now a current congressman who also worked with us in 2001. One of the bills I worked on, the internet was still relatively new at this time, as I date myself. So the child pornography laws in Texas were written around actual hard copy, photographs, right? There was nothing in statute for electronic images of these things, right? Because it was new. And the statutes didn't address electronic images. So in 2001, we worked very hard to pass a bill that dealt with child pornography as it pertains to the electronic images that people are seeing online, okay? 23 years later, we're talking about legislation now that deals with child pornography as it pertains to artificial intelligence images.
Deep fakes completely.
Yes, because it's not a real person. You would know it's not a real person. It looks entirely real, but it's not a real person. So how does the law address that? And if you look now that's been filed, dozens of bills, easily dozens of bills have been filed specifically around AI and child pornography. And I had a sheriff come up to me and said, hey, here's a case that I have, and outline this awful situation. And he says, I can't do anything about it. It's not a real image. Okay, so they have to figure out what that looks like, right? And so yes, guardrails around it, okay? But what happens when Adobe puts a product out there that I've used for 40 years, right? 35 years. What happens when someone uses that product to do something they shouldn't be doing? Right? In my opinion, Adobe didn't do anything.
Sure.
Held harmless, right? There are some members who would disagree with that statement.
Well, there's some changing technology. Look at OpenAI's Sora. Have you seen
haven't.
Trailer for that? So it's very controversial, but the video image that it creates that it generates using AI prompt. You type in, show me a picture of Larry Gonzales flying around with monkeys, and it is the most accurate image. This has not been released to the public yet. They've just been teasing it, and the movie industry and Hollywood's freaking out.
Correct.
Everyone's freaking out.
Correct.
But then also people on this side of things seeing the terrible ramifications, but also the amazing things we could create with it.
Right.
So it's this, it's a really hard balance, but they haven't released it, and I'm curious to know more reasons.
Wow.
Why? But Sora, some of the graphics look incredibly real.
I have 3 friends that work in Hollywood. And they're struggling with this, right? Because the big strike that happened over the summer was about screenplays being written by AI. It was about acting. If you can generate these images of the perfect actor for this role through artificial intelligence, maybe you don't need to hire the actual person, right? So there's all these conversations around what Hollywood could do with artificial intelligence. And that's why you saw the backup this summer. The strike was, wait a minute, we need some guarantees for screenwriters and actors and things like that, because AI possibly can really get in there and start doing things on its own, right?
You think of modeling, influencing, advertising that wouldn't need to hire people.
Correct.
Right. But they would need a different skill set to do another job that would probably be created by AI. So it's this whole kind of industrial revolution that we're in, where everything's changing. Everyone needs to adapt. So I understand it touches every single one of your clients. That makes sense.
So back in my graphic design days, there was a certain technology in the print shop. And all these guys were working on things called match prints and blue lines, this whole proofing process of what it looks like, and millions of dollars worth of machines that produced proofs, and you had to go through all this whole process. Now they just create a PDF and send it to you. So what happens to all the guys that used to do match prints and blue lines and all these things that are now non-existent in the printing industry? Well, they had to learn how to do the things that it was adapting to, right? These guys had to adapt or they were gone. And so they had to learn a new skill set. Yes, there are efficiencies with it. There's all kinds of wonderful things that come with today's technology. But you had a group that had to adapt. But it did create more opportunities in different things, but you had to adapt to it.
Well, you were one of our earliest adopters of USLege.
Yes.
And I love that. You gave us so much feedback and have seen it evolve. What do you see this being in 5 years? You know, with the legislature, how we can utilize AI? Where do you see it going?
It is transformative. I think it will change what we do, how we do it, greater than the internet did, right? So when I got here, we had typewriters. That was the technology. There were no video cameras on the floor. You couldn't watch session. You couldn't watch committees. If you wanted to see session, you had to go to the gallery or go to a committee room, right? So, man, I was there before the computers were, right? Along comes the internet, and it's like, wow, this is changing everything about how that building operates. The next step is AI. It is going to make the change to the internet look like child's play compared to what's available now. The tools are absolutely amazing what you can do from an efficiency standpoint, right? The access to information, but I'm really beginning, as I really dig down into USLege, really beginning to, I'm getting much better at my AI prompts. I'm getting much better at pulling the information because it's there, right? Then the skill set becomes, how do you grab it? And that's what I've been having a blast figuring out, was the best utilization, the best prompts. How do I word the prompt in a way that gets what I get from it, what I need from it? So I've really gotten creative with my prompts lately, and I'm just asking it, like I had one where I just asked it, which 3 questions prompted the most conversation? Which questions were the most consternation? Which 3 questions are the ones the members really struggle with the most? Well, you know, and so it lays out, you know, Senator Schwartner asked the question to the guy from, and it just completely described to me the question that was asked, and then it runs through all the back and forth. It's fantastic. I mean, now you read through it and you work through it, and then that kind of prompts some more questions for me, and you can dig down as deep as you want, right? Some people say, summarize this in 500 words. Does a great job. Most of mine are 8 to 12 pages, and that's just, in my opinion, still, I'm touching the beginning of it. So I tell my clients, the first thing I do is I put an outline on the top. Here's what the next 10 pages look like. There's an outline. And then being a graphic designer, I have mine designed in a way where the eye can instantly see the breaks, right?
Yeah.
So for me, the format's important. Otherwise, you get 10 pages of paragraph. That's not the best format for someone to receive it. So I use my graphic design background with different elements, secret sauce we won't discuss here.
Yeah.
But my reports look really good, and they're visually easy to read. So I'm learning better and better all the time how to get the best information from the software. It's just phenomenal.
You're becoming a prompt engineer.
Prompt engineer.
Prompt engineer. That's a new job. Did you ever think you would have that?
My dad's an aerospace engineer, and I knew I would never walk in my dad's footsteps. So I think he would laugh if you were to use the word engineer anywhere near me.
Isn't that the cool thing with technology, though? It can allow people, I'm a lot more in the creative space. I'm not technically, I'm not the tech expert at the company, but I am able to, with some of these tools, become more technically advanced. And I mean, 5 years into the future, who knows where we'll be with just this automating complete workflows.
Right.
Which is amazing.
So I had a young girl, a friend of one of my, gosh, I've known this guy since we were in second grade. And so I hired her to come help me. Has never been in the building, didn't know policy, had never seen a committee hearing. She was summarizing for me these committee hearings as good or better than I was because the tools allow her. You don't have to be an expert in that Senate B and C subject matter for 8 hours and 32 minutes. What you have to know how to do is write the question, to write the prompt. You can get the information just with the prompts and then read through it, which gives you the idea for more prompts, right? She did a fantastic job with zero experience. The tools enabled her to pull that out.
Yeah, I remember when I first was summarizing committee hearings, I did a terrible job because I would be in there for 8 hours. I was working on other things. So I was trying to listen out for things. And to pull all that information in aggregate for 8 hours is just a very hard task. I was typing up exact sentences. I couldn't keep up with how fast people were speaking.
Right.
It was not my specialty. And that was one of the reasons I started this exact tool was because of that and thinking this would help a lot of people.
Oh, it's great. And I'm watching this thing live, right, with kind of the live feed. And I'm able to send do the transcription, the exact quote.
Sure.
Like, not my summary. Here's the exact quote, right?
Yeah.
And what really helps is I send a lot of videos. I send a lot of videos to my clients because to me the video is important because it puts it in context. How they said it, right? The expression they said it with, right? The pacing they said it with, the volume they said it with. I mean, to me, all of that is more important than the actual words sometimes. So when someone gets a transcription, yes, the words are there, but you're missing so much more when you see the arms crossed when they're asking the question, when they're leaning back and asking the question. There's so much visual, nonverbal communication that goes on. That's where the video comes in. So when you send them the video link, it really allows them to see with all the emotions of what was said.
I'm happy you're loving it.
It's great.
Clients like it?
It's great. It's great. Oh, my gosh. You know what's great is my clients love the fact that I'm using it. They love the fact that I'm using new technology, right? They appreciate the fact that they're getting their reports, and it's great. It's accurate. It's really good information. They get it in a timely manner. It's in a format that looks good. And so they like the fact that I'm using AI.
I love it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Well, it's changing everything. What's the biggest way this is impacting AI is changing and impacting your clients?
So we do a lot of work in the business side. So a lot of businesses, a lot of economic development stuff. Cities with economic development corporations are looking at jobs, you're looking at building infrastructure. And so when somebody says to me, hey, we're bringing 3 data centers to our wonderful city, let's talk about that, right? Let's talk about what that means to bring in a data center, right? With the amount of energy it uses and or the amount of water it uses to cool it. And all of a sudden, you've got an entity there that you really got to think through what's my ROI. And so different cities are making different decisions. But when you have a data center, and there's one being built in Central Texas, when you have a data center that uses a day of electricity equals a day of the city of Lubbock, the city of Lubbock in 4 days. 1 day, a data center equals 4 days, the city of Lubbock.
Wow.
You really got to think through your grid and the electricity use and what that means for the rest of your community.
Sure. So
the answer is getting more into, we're going to build our own plant on site, nuclear. Okay, so now we're talking about a big data center, and my guess is they don't want to be on our grid either, right? I think we got some work to do on our grid too. So I think it goes both ways. But then we're having a conversation, what does that look like to have your own mini nuclear running your stuff? And then the governor has the commission, and it just came out a couple of weeks ago, the whole commission on studying nuclear energy in Texas, and it was very, very good. AI wrote a beautiful summary about it for me. So that's next, right? So now you start thinking about, okay, so what does that mean, right? And you have to really think through normally from an economic development perspective, I'm the city manager and I'm bringing in a big box store. And I know there's a certain amount of draw on resources, but I'm also getting 600 jobs. I'm getting a tax base. Those guys have disposable income. They're spending in my community. So yes, there's this certain amount of take from the system, but a certain amount of put back in the system. From the city manager perspective, what does that look like? Like, what's my ratio, right? Well, when you get into certain issues, maybe it doesn't provide a whole lot of jobs. Maybe it doesn't provide nearly as much taxes. Maybe the from a city's perspective, the outgo is way more than the incoming. And you just have to weigh those things out to understand what the benefit is for your particular community to have certain projects come in, because the draw on water and electricity is significant. It is significant. Do they pay taxes? Yes, they pay taxes. Great. But on items that are depreciating. Every 5 years, maybe there's new servers. We're right back to this value. And they depreciate them, they pay less taxes. New servers come in, taxes go up again, they depreciate them. So I'm not even sure that number is as steady as one would think of about a straight just property tax, right? So it's all those kind of economic development things you have to really think through when you bring these types of projects in.
What are you most excited about this session coming up?
Oh my gosh. Every session has its own feel. This will be my 17th regular session. I can't even tell you the special session.
Sure.
My 17th regular session. And every one of them have its own thing, right? Every one of them have its own feel. When I first got here, it was a Democrat House, Democrat Senate, Democrat governor. That's how long I've been here, right? So I've seen it all. And with the exception of technology, put technology aside for a second, with the exception of technology, there aren't a whole lot of new issues, Laura. Something that somebody's looking at 2025, we probably looked at it in 2011 and 2003, and we've seen it before, right?
Yeah.
But what's changed is where we are as a society, looking at the same issue, and the makeup of the body, looking at the same issue. It's not fair for someone in 2025 to say, well, why didn't they do this in 2003? You know, it's a different time, right? It's not where we were. And in 2003, that wasn't going to be possible. But in 2025, maybe it is now, right? But I don't think it's fair to have some, kind of like this historical perspective of then what were they doing in 03 and 05 in those first 2 years of Republican control? And why wasn't it done yet? And it's a different time. It's a different time. But largely, the bills that I'm reading through, I've seen these bills.
They're all very fast.
I've seen these bills for a long, long, long time, which is always amusing to me. So we'll see what this one takes on, right? Everybody has its own feel, its own flavor. There's always an issue, right, or an issue or two that kind of dominates. I'm sure this is no different. Everything you're watching now is things that we've seen before, over and over and over again. So from the old guy perspective, I can say this with certainty. You won't hear a lot of certainty statements. I will say this with certainty.
What is it?
Every 2 years for 170 years, men and women have come to Austin and they figured it out. And they're going to figure it out again.
Yep. Because
they always have, and 100 years from now, they always will. They're going to figure it out. And I have full confidence in the people of Texas. I have full confidence in my colleagues and former colleagues across the street. They'll figure it out. It'll be fine. The world's not going to end on June 5th. I mean, it's going to be fine. Maybe some things didn't pass that you would like to have passed, and maybe some things passed that maybe you didn't want to have passed. But at the end of the day, it's Texas. We've got great leaders here. They're going to work together, and they're going to figure it out, and it's going to be fine.
I love it. Well, I love the optimism always.
It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. Nothing to worry about. Just smile and keep going. It's going to be fine.
Well, excited to see your smiling face. Saying that all the session when we're around the Capitol.
Find me in May. You know what,
Yes.
though, to say that, I worked 9 sessions of staff.
Okay.
And everybody knew me just like smiling and happy and friendly and joking around and things like that. It was very important to me as a member that I didn't lose that.
Sure.
I didn't want to be the guy that they were like, man, Larry was so cool. We forgot I liked it. He's kind of a jerk now. Like I was so aware of, I didn't want people to think that going from staff to member, that I became like this awful human being,
right,
arrogant or power hungry or egocentric or narcissistic. I wanted to be Larry, right? I just wanted to be Larry. So we worked really, really hard at that the whole time I was a member to make certain that nobody thought, hey, Larry thinks he's too big for his britches now, right? So I remember one day I was walking through conference committee for the budget. I have all my binders, and my chief of staff, Chris Sanchez, great guys, walking in. He has a set full of binders, and we're walking around. We're trying to hide from people because we don't want to answer all the budget conference committee questions. And so I see a great friend of mine who has since passed away, Danny Jensen. And Danny Jensen is sitting there by himself on a bench. And he had just had a Facebook post about both his kids are actors in Hollywood. And they had both had these really great readings. And they had called to tell him how great the auditions went. And I read that earlier that morning. So here I am with all the stuff, and Chris with all the stuff, and I saw Danny and said, hey, give me 30 seconds. So I went and I sat down with Danny and said, hey, man, congratulations on your kids. It's really cool. Proud Papa lit up and told me all about his kids and how great it was and how happy they were. And I said, man, I'm happy for you. I said, I got to run. I got a thing or two to take care of. And he laughed, and I walked away. And later that night, he posted on Facebook, ran into Chairman Gonzales. Same guy he always was.
That's great.
And I don't say it from a braggart standpoint. I'm saying that we work really hard to just be Larry. Just be the guy you always were, and don't let it get to you, right? From the ego side. So man, that made me proud that we were still just Larry.
That's great advice.
Just Larry,
If people want to find this great Larry here in front of me to have as a lobbyist or find you, where do they go?
Gosh, the website is www.desk138.com. I took a lot of ribbing and teasing from my colleagues when I called my company desk138.com. But from a marketing guy, I knew what I was doing, because everybody says, that's a strange name. Where does that come from? And I get to say, when I was chairman in the House, that was my desk number. So it not only puts you in the elected class, it puts you in leadership.
I love
And
it.
from a client perspective, that's why I like on my Zoom. You've been on my Zooms with me. I have all my chairman gavels behind me.
Yeah.
They don't tell you what they are. You just see all the gavels lined up. And
Yeah,
you probably figure out pretty quickly that I may have done a thing or two in my life. And but I will say this, credit goes to a lot of people who work with me. You heard me mention Chris Sanchez earlier. Really great staff. LBB staff, Legislative Budget Board staff, sat with us for hundreds of hours going through budget items. Wonderful staff, the governor's office, lieutenant governor's office. There's nobody over there that just pats themselves on the back and can take credit for all of it. What a tremendous teamwork from the 22-year-old staffer at the front desk. Everybody makes it work. And, you be kind to everybody. Be kind to everybody. It's not hard to smile and be kind. I mean, it's just the world goes a lot better. More flies with honey than vinegar, right? And so just maintain the smile and work hard, and don't let the pressure wear you down like it did me in 2017.
Yeah.
I think that was really, really, really dark time for me. But now, just Larry. When I first came out, people were like, "What do we call you?" Like, it's just Larry, man. Like, I'm fine. It's just Larry. My first name's Just. That's fine. So.
Well, you've got quite the story, and I so appreciate you coming on, for all your support, for being a partner, and keep up the good work.
Appreciate it. Great being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.